viewers. My name is Casey Maynard, and I'm a children's librarian here at the Iowa City Public Library. I would like to extend a huge thank you to our donors, Hills Bank and the Iowa City Community School District Foundation, for making this visiting author possible. My guest today is author-illustrator Bryan Collier.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here today and visiting all of our schools.
It's great to be here. This is wonderful. Thank you.
We're really excited to have you here. I actually had the privilege of seeing you talk to first and second graders at Alexander Elementary School yesterday.
Yes.
And you shared some of your favorite picture books from childhood, namely Harold and the Purple Crayon and The Snowy Day.
Yes.
And you talked about how in childhood you thought those books were about one thing, but as you reread them as an adult, you realized that those books aren't necessarily just about two boys at play, but are about boys dreamwalking.
Absolutely.
I really want to hear what you have to say about what you mean by dreamwalking and how this connects to your work.
Well, what I mean by dreamwalking is when Peter in Snowy Day, he puts on his red jumpsuit and he goes outside and he makes these footprints in the snow because the book says he walked with his toes pointed out like this and his toes pointed in, and then he dragged his feet slowly. He made new kinds of prints, and he found a stick and he made another track in the snow, and he made snow angels in the snow, and he made a snowman and the snowballs, and so he's doing all these things and it looks like snow play. But he's really not. He's dreaming of something else. He's in his own world. He's like walking and creating a world around him as he walks. I call that dream walking, because it's bigger than what it actually looks like. And the other one was Harold, when he's really drawing his world in front of you. And it just looks like he's just playing with the crayon. He draws simple images like the moon and the horizon line, but he's going on an adventure. He's not just walking and drawing, he's dream walking creatively, yes.
And that connects back to your work in multiple of your stories.
Absolutely. So, well, it never dawned on me until maybe last year when I went back and looked at these other books. I said, they're doing something else. So I'm considering what the main characters are doing, but then the bigger picture, what they're really revealing. So I went back and I looked at some of the books that I had done, like Between the Lines is the life of Ernie Barnes and how he went from the football field to the art gallery.
Right.
Ernie Barnes was an artist, a painter, and a football player. He played professional ball, so he was gifted and talented athletically as well as being an artist. But then when he was a little boy, he said he loved it after it rained in North Carolina, because he would go outside and pick up a stick and do what he called mud drawings or mud painting in the mud. And it looks odd. The neighbors would watch to see these lines that Ernie would do and this art that he would do in the mud. But he wasn't just a kid playing in the mud. He was dreaming. Because later on, he became this world-famous artist that his work was featured on a TV show, nationally televised TV show called Good Times. And that show was on TV, but it influenced a lot of illustrators that are making books today, like Kadir Nelson and Frank Morrison and John Holyfield and so many, many others, because we all saw that show, you know? So he wasn't just playing in the mud, he was really dreaming of something to come, and it has.
That's lovely.
Yes.
When you were talking with the kids yesterday, you were talking about your creative process and how you are a collage artist working in collage and watercolors, and you built a verbal collage with kids and making a pizza. And I really love that metaphor. Can you share more about how collage connects to life?
Oh, well, it's about piecing things together that have no relationship to each other at first. And then you figure out a way as a person, as an artist, to say, wait a minute, this goes together like this, and let's try this piece with this. And then all of a sudden you have a tapestry of something brand new. That's a metaphor. We're trying to piece our lives together, moments and moments, to create this tapestry that's something that's beautiful, as a legacy that says that we were here. So that's the metaphor that translates into life. So what I do is I boil it down to simple things that we do, like cooking and making a pizza.
Right.
All those separate ingredients, you can line them all up. They have no relationship, but somebody figured out, so well, let's put this together. This may taste together with this. And then all of a sudden, you can make a million types of pizzas, different toppings.
And everyone's pizza is different.
Yeah, it's different because everybody's sensibility about art and creativity and taste are different. So you, as a person, you create what you like. You make your own thing. You put your own objects together and things together that says that brands the fact that you are an individual and uniquely you. And that's what's exciting about being a collage artist. Yes.
So lovely. I was watching another one of your interviews, and you spoke about how watching children create is like watching the purest form of intention.
Yeah.
How does artistic intention shift when you move into adulthood, and how do you personally reconcile your own artistic intention with, say, the textual intention of another creator?
Okay. With children, they're creating out of the act of necessity. They create because it's just something they need to do. It has to be expressive and it has to come out. But as you get older and you figure out, well, I'm gonna be an artist, but you can't stay in that romantic state of I'm an artist and the world's gonna come together, the light bills will get paid and the rent will get paid and I'll just make this art. You have to be practical as well.
Right.
So your intentions change a little bit because you know time is your greatest asset, so you got to use it wisely, and you got to create wisely as you search for your endeavor of being a creator. Now, when you collaborate with another artist, and let's say you're making a picture book, and they hand you the words, you got to interpret the words. I can't mimic what's in your mind if you're the writer. I can only interpret the words that you put down on paper. And so the true collaboration is when I take your words and I expand the idea. I'm an addition to what you were trying to express. So I'll expand it. So it's my job to create the whole look of the book, the age of the kids, what they're wearing, and how they interact with each other, and the spaces that they interact in, whether it be interior or exteriors, the different parts of the world that they actually live in. All that comes into play, and the light that falls upon them. So how are they viewed as well? So all that stuff comes into play as the illustrator.
Can you tell me about your creative process in general? What does the move from manuscript to finished picture book look like for you?
Well, it's not always the same.
Right. No, please, Fred. Thank you.
It's not always the same. When I get the text, I read it a bunch of times because what I'm trying to hear is something else beyond the words that I'm reading. Like when I read a sentence, how does it sound? How does it feel coming off my tongue? The inflection of the words and the last word on a page, and then what that means, and when the next word in the next page, how they come together as well. So all the spaces in between the words is what I'm listening for. So that's the way I interpret the text. And if I'll say it the first 10 times after I read it, it'll sound one way, but the 99th and the 100th time that I read it, it sounds very, very different. So I live with it and I sleep with it for a while until I feel like I'm ready to execute the images. I think I see the characters, and that's the first stage. And then now I gotta go find that character that I just saw. I gotta go find that kid that'll fit this book, you know, and the parents and the whole deal, everybody that's gonna be in the book. I gotta find those people. So that's the biggest search for me. Once I get an idea of how the book should go, to find the kid to be in the book.
So do you ask individuals to model for you?
Absolutely. I use family members and friends, and when I do school visits, sometimes it's a kid that just jumps out at me. The energy and the aura around them jump out, and then I'll bring that whole family in and ask them, can we do a book together?
Oh, that's wonderful. Do you ever model for yourself at all?
Oh no, I don't want to be in a book.
No.
I'm a voyeur. I stay on the outside.
Stay on the other side of that. Yeah. How does that change when it's a book that you've written yourself?
Well, normally, if it's a book that I've written myself, I see the images first before I see the words. Oh. Like I can see a story. I have a story in my head that I've been walking around with for years, but I can't find the right word combination to get it out. That's my struggle in writing, is to say exactly what I actually see. You know.
So Uptown, the illustrations came first.
Yeah, I knew the whole book. I saw it. What I wrote down first, I said Harlem today, Harlem yesterday, and Harlem to come. And then I wrote Uptown. And the boy hits aspects of the neighborhood, of the Apollo Theater in history, the basketball court and the history of that basketball court, and the brownstones, the history of that's still there. So all those things, those combination of things.
And that whole book revolves around the change that's
Yeah.
happening through time, because it starts with that caterpillar and ends with that
Yes,
butterfly.
the butterfly, the metamorphic effect of that as well.
Very interesting. So many of your titles are nonfiction,
Yes.
and they are about important figures in Black history. And most of the books that you've written and have worked on have really important social justice undercurrents.
Oh, yeah.
Was that an intention that you had when you set out working in picture books?
Well, it was a lucky offering, so to speak, when I got into picture books, and then I was actually offered to do these particular texts. And I gravitated to it because I wanted to know, I had a sneaky suspicion that I didn't get educated the way I should have been. So it allowed me to go back and do research on a Rosa Parks or a Martin Luther King and see exactly what happened and what everybody's been talking about, because these iconic figures get boiled down into sound bites.
Right.
And I said it's way more than a sound bite. So when I went down and saw history up close and talked to people that were still living, that lived throughout this actual, it's not in the textbooks, but it's a living oral history that I wanted to capture. So in research, I talked with, when Mrs. Parks was coming on the road with me and Nikki Giovanni for a book signing, we were going to do across the country tour. And I was excited about that alone.
Yes.
So I did all the artwork, and she saw the artwork. But when the book was released, she passed away 2 weeks after the book was released. So she didn't get a chance to come with us. With Martin's Big Words, I had breakfast with Mrs. King. And I talked to other people, and I went to all the locations, his childhood home and his churches, Dexter Baptist Church in Montgomery.
Wow.
And I sat at his desk in the same chair that he sat in. And so all those things allowed me to see the world in which he saw, you know, and it helped me be re-educated, one, and get a broader view of history. So that's what I'm really fascinated by, the research alone.
Yeah.
It just takes you places that nobody knows these stories, you know, really, so.
Well, thankfully we do now.
Yeah, we know them now.
As a children's librarian, I feel like I'm constantly talking about how picture books are for everyone. And you really got at that in your talk with the students yesterday in saying that you never outgrow picture books because they make you pay attention to the details.
Yeah.
In talking about that research that you do about individuals, how do you go about choosing which details of a story or of an individual's life that you want to either include or exclude from your illustrations?
Good question. Well, when I did Martin's Big Words, when you open the book, the end papers, they're stained glass windows. And I asked the kids, well, what do you think stained glass windows have to do with Dr. Martin Luther King? And they say the obvious things like, well, he was a pastor of a church, of his father's church and his own, and the stained glass windows are in a church. I said, well, look closer. The question was, what did the stained glass windows have to do with Dr. King? And they said, well, he died in the church. I said, no, let's look closer. And I said, well, look at the colors. All the different colors that make up a stained glass window. Dr. King's message was about bringing different colored people together as well. So it's a metaphor for Dr. King's message. Those kind of details that you couldn't read his bio and say, well, let's pick out stained glass windows. You couldn't see it, so I had to go see that for myself. See all the information up close and see his life up close and say, wait a minute, the colors, the people he brought together. With Rosa Parks, it's the same thing. When I read the book, the text that Nikki Giovanni wrote on Rosa Parks, I stopped and I said, Rosa Parks is a chandelier. That's what I said. And I wrote it down. I said, she's a chandelier. Now, what is a chandelier? When you walk into a hotel, a lobby, and there's chandeliers, they're up on the ceiling, up high. I said, when you say Rosa Parks, you gotta look up. She's a light in the midst of the darkness. So those type of things are, I take these big ideas and then we do the book and we pare them down. And we show how the light shifts in the book. In the Rosa Parks, the sky is stormy. From the beginning to the end, the sky is stormy. That's letting the reader know there's going to be a problem here.
Right.
You know, it's a storm coming, you know, and Rosa's the light in the storm. You know, I just wanted to tell her story because they always said she was tired that day. But the fact was she was tired every day. It was nothing special about that day. But she was done. She has had enough. Something in her said, no, I'm not going to move. This is it. So those type of things, knowing that part of the history, I make those kind of creative decisions visually in the
Put
work.
those details in
Yeah.
that people can go back in and parse out later.
Go back and get it and pull it out.
Even in your work that touches on a really tough subject matter, because a lot of it does, there's this consistent undercurrent of love and hope and joy that I really see in a lot of your work. Can you talk about how those emotions play into your creative process?
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's tragic instances that happen throughout history. There's loss. Like you wouldn't think of picture books to talk about loss. I said, with the book Knock Knock, I said, it could have been death or divorce or military obligation or incarceration or just gone. To this boy, his daddy's gone.
It's absence.
Yeah. And he's going to look for his daddy. Heartbreaking.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So, but then a letter comes from Papa, and then Papa says, the best of me still lives in you. Okay, we're gonna build you up because you still have a life to live, young boy. Knock down doors to your dreams. That's what Papa said. He said, I won't be there to knock for you. You got to learn to knock for yourself. Knock down doors of poverty and racism. He said, dribble the page with the brilliance of your ballpoint pen. That's amazing.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so all those mantras and all those things of encouragement to build him up for the future. He's the future. The boy is the future.
It's so bittersweet. Yeah.
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 So all those things come into play. There's always hope in the midst of the darkness. All you got to do is just strike a match. Just
Look up.
and look up. That's what I'm talking about. So that's my foundation, and that's how I tell the story. So I don't care how hard the story is.
Yep.
Watch this hope show up and lead us out of here.
Always.
Yes.
Always. I see it in Freedom River.
Yeah.
With the river through everyone, the river
Yes.
that runs through me.
And we're connected by the river,
Yeah.
you and I. We're connected. You can't get away from it.
Right, connected through the river, connected through the collage,
absolutely.
too. It's the same with the stained glass window. And I
Yeah.
love the way the stained glass window is also a collage.
Yes.
Right? It all connects back together to Dreamwalking,
Yeah.
to all of those things that you were talking about with our children here. I remember you saying that collage felt like a natural form of art for you because
Yeah.
you used to watch your grandmother make quilts. And
Yeah.
quilting is a form of collage.
Right.
Aside from your grandmother, are there any other artistic influences for you and your family?
Well, I think in explaining the type of art that you do, it's a rhythm, okay. She made quilts, but she also made preserves. You know, strawberry preserves
Yeah,
and stuff.
yeah.
Now, here's where I really watched her. She would line up those mason jars that she sterilized. And on the stove, there was a wood stove, and it was part wood and gas stove combination. And on the stove was a big pot of boiling fruit. She wouldn't allow me to get close to the stove, but I had to watch her do it. And I watched her do it, and I watched the color and the light come through the window as she poured the hot fruit into these mason jars and sealed them, and all the little steps. It was like she was orchestrating. It was the orchestration, because everything is cooking is timing. This is ready, so this will be ready. And then you bring it all together, and you have this great meal and great product that you produced. So when I'm making my art, everything is timing. I'm cutting and gluing. While this is drying, I'm painting over here. I let that part dry, and then I take something else. So I'm always moving.
Are you doing that in your head too, constantly moving parts of collages that you've saved?
Absolutely. I mean, there's no, I don't have it organized where I have all the blues over here and all the rest. No, it's chaos. It's organized chaos. So I can find something that I had 2 years ago in the corner. I know where it is. I got to reach for it. I just got to go over there and find it and come back. So it's that orchestration and the timing. And then watch her make the quilts, piecing these odd pieces together and being surprised at the end of it, because you don't know how it's going to turn out.
Right.
But you're wonderfully surprised, and that's the excitement of making the book.
So you were just talking a little about your studio. Can you tell me more about your studio and how you go about collecting pieces for collage?
Oh, in New York City, there would be vendors on the side. There are vendors on the sidewalk selling old magazines. Like people throw out Elle, the fashion magazines.
Yeah.
Well, people collect them, and they on the shelf they cost about $4 or $5, or maybe $7 now, but they sell them for $1. So I buy old magazines like Architectural Digest and then I'll buy Elle and Vogue magazines because they have great photographs in them. And I don't buy them for the photographs. I buy them for the color, like swatches of color. So that's what I like. And I collect those and I stack them up and I tear them up and glue them and do all kinds, and cut them up and use them for the artwork wherever I need them.
So you don't organize your pieces for collage by color or texture?
Not
or
at all.
It's just all like this mental organization of...
It has to be chaos because it allows me to implement the technique of timing, you know, that orchestration. So I have to keep moving to find something. And that means I have to force myself to, okay, paint this part, paint the face, and then let it dry because we're going to cut it out and create a background that we can superimpose it on. But I need the timing to do it. So that's what it is.
Do you go into a book knowing what colors you want to incorporate in collage? And
Not at all. You read the text, it offers up the tone of the book, the color tone.
Right.
Whether it's a dark book or a bright book where these bright, vibrant colors come in, or it's more subdued and there's a yellow, almost heavenly light that falls on the characters.
Does the research influence the kinds of color choices that you use too? In terms of like Rosa Parks with all
Yeah.
the yellows and the oranges?
Absolutely. It's serious, it really does. And then the Dave the Potter has a different light that comes into play.
Yeah.
Like when you do the research, when I went down to South Carolina, it was so hot in the summer. I said, well, this book has to be hot.
Has to
in
feel
the
it,
heat,
yeah.
because we're talking about a plantation and slavery, and earth, so it has to be earthy because we're talking about clay and the clay pots. So all the stuff comes into play as well.
So we're getting towards the end of our interview here, and this is generally where I like to ask some fun questions.
Sure.
So first, can you give us a sneak peek at anything that you have kind of coming down the pipeline in the next year or so?
I do. I just finished Thurgood Marshall.
Oh, cool.
The young Thurgood Marshall as a lawyer before
Wow.
Supreme Court, and the life. He was it. He was the man. He was so dynamic even as a boy. His real name is Thorogood. He went to his parents and said, I got to change my name to Thurgood. He was 6. Changed the name, and they did. And he became this dynamic lawyer. But he was courageous because he would go down into the Jim Crow South and take on these cases with the NAACP. And there was one incident where the KKK caught him. They had him in the car. They were taking Thurgood Marshall down by the river. There was a mob with a rope and a tree. And his colleagues intercepted him and got him out of there. That was his day. That was going to be his day right there. He was trying a case down south. He would have to call a sheriff, call ahead to get safety to be able to do these jobs that he did. But the community knew when Thurgood was coming, something good was going to happen because he won all the cases that he took on. You know, so I think we need to re-examine a Thurgood Marshall because now we think of him on the Supreme Court, and that's wonderful. As the first African American on the Supreme Court, that's wonderful. But we got to consider his youth and his young life and how he got there, and all the struggles and hurdles and triumphs that he had leading up to that as well. And it's worthy to be told. Yes.
Is that one that you've written?
No, I didn't write that one. Jonah Winters wrote that one. And then the second one that I did, I'm working on now, even here today, it's called Charles Tindley. It's called By and By, The Life of Charles Tindley, who was a preacher, a Methodist preacher, African-American, who built churches along the East Coast, Methodist churches. But he's also a songwriter. He wrote We Shall Overcome. He wrote the anthem. And he did that, but he built these churches. Now, here's the connection. I grew up in Maryland. he built a church on my property in Maryland.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was when I was, now it was well abandoned and all that stuff, but I grew up with this church on the corner of my property. And we used to play in that church as kids.
Is it still there?
It's not there anymore. It's just the steps as a landmark. The steps are still there. And but we used to do Tinley's Day. We celebrate his life every year in Maryland. He was born and raised in Berlin, Maryland. I grew up 40 minutes from Berlin, Maryland. And he built churches on my property and in Philadelphia and along the East Coast as well. So we're telling his story as well.
That's lovely, very personal.
Yes, super personal.
All right, lastly, do you have a book that you're embarrassed that you haven't read?
Oh, there's tons of books. I'm so behind in books that are out there. I mean, Jacqueline Woodson has a new book out that somebody just told me about that I'm ready to read. I got to catch up with Jason Reynolds.
I was
and
just
all
saying,
his
Ghost
stuff.
is mine. Yeah, I haven't read that one yet.
I got to catch up with all his stuff. So, who's like a lion on the scene. He's taking over everything, and it's so wonderful. I'm so happy. I'm happy to know him. Really, I'm happy to know him. Yes.
It's great to have him around.
Yes.
Well, thank you again so much for being here with us today and for visiting all of our students
It
in
has
Iowa
been a
City.
pleasure.
It's been a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you.
And again, a big thank you to our sponsors, the Iowa City Community School District Foundation and also Hills Bank for the Visiting Author Program. Thank you, Bryan.
Thank you.